guys, for those of you that don't know, there's been some major changes. I'm joined by Matthew Marks from eVocalize. And I got to tell you, these changes to the TCPA. So you've got the FCC, and the FCC controls the TCPA, and the TCPA has come out with some new guidelines for what we need to be doing for calling, texting, et cetera. And a lot of people are concerned. And I want to find out from Matthew, who is honestly the expert on this topic. I mean, we've got, listen, Matthew, I've watched several webinars you've done recently. And I honestly, very, and I'm not just, like sucking up to you or anything like that. I really do, see you as the expert on this particular topic. And there's a lot of confusion out there right now. There's a lot of question, a lot of trepidation. A lot of people are concerned not only about their activities. For example, our audience is predominantly real estate agents. The vast majority of them are thinking, well, hey, now, what does this mean for me? Can I still make cold calls? Can I still call expireds and FSBOs? Do I need to worry about my lead source providers? What are they doing? And so I'm excited. So before we dive into all that, and guys, we're going to have plenty of time. I'm going to get this Facebook Live while Matthew is introducing himself. I would like you to just tell him, first of all, Matthew, who are you? What the heck is eVocalize? And the reason I said is because I don't think that people know what eVocalize is, and I don't think they realize that you guys actually power a ton of stuff in the real estate industry that they're probably all using. And so I would love for you just to explain that while I put his Facebook Live.
Sounds good, Michael. Well, first of all, appreciate you having me on. Some of these topics get on the legal subjects get a little boring. I like to talk about like expanding your CRM database. Like Ryan Young. I listened to your session with Ryan Young and building your database and growing, and we like to talk about that. But this is a really important subject for folks, and so I appreciate you getting the visibility and having me on. We're just trying to nothing self-serving. Really, we're trying to just get the word out about this because it has a potential to really bite some folks. And I think it's not being talked about enough. So first, thanks for having me on, and thanks for just getting the visibility out there, trying to help the industry out. In terms of my background, I've done a lot of things in my career, none of them full-time real estate business. So I have an appreciation for the real estate industry from the outside looking in until about 7 or 8 years ago. We founded eVocalize based on the concept. We just taken our last marketing technology company public on the NASDAQ, and we looked out at what was happening in these industries from a marketing and lead generation perspective, and a lot of it was pretty old school. And so we looked at how we could apply technology and what's become pretty sophisticated artificial intelligence to the problem of how do we market, how do we lead generate, how do we get how do we get a machine going like the portals are going, but that could be used by every real estate agent and team. Now we've expanded into the mortgage space, loan officers, and so that's our heritage at eVocalize, is really about how do we empower the little guy with the sophistication of the big guys. Funny enough, we started with the big guys. So we actually built a system hand in hand with Redfin and realtor.com to start their lead generation pipeline using automation and AI that then they would package up and then sell and use in different ways for the industry. Realtor.com is still a very large partner of ours. Most of the leads they generate coming out of Google or Meta actually come through eVocalize and are generated by eVocalize's technology. And then in 2021, they invested more than $10 million into our business to help us continue to grow and do more things for them and for the industry. And so that's a little bit of our heritage. But really, you're right. We're white labeled. So as a founder, it's a little sad, it's a little humbling that the eVocalize name isn't out there a whole lot, but we're bundled under most of the leading lead generation tools across the industry for both brokerages like EXP and Keller Williams and United Real Estate, and also lots of the tech providers. Most of the largest tech providers have actually all their lead generation and marketing components use our engine underneath them. So that's our heritage is building demand generation engines for the industry that allow you to do what the portals do, but on your own. So again, hearkening back to your last session, you're talking with Ryan Young. It's all about, okay, how do you not buy leads from Zillow? How do you generate them yourself for a more efficient price, either organically or through paid means, where you're actually doing what the portals are doing and building up your own database, so you have your own first party lead source that you can rely on over time, which I think is the secret to success in this industry, as you know better than I do.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you on its importance. And I'm shocked in a way that Realtor.com has made such a big investment in your company and is not causing you to have to be exclusive to them. I'm amazed that they're allowing you to do this for the little guys, because frankly, this is the direction the industry needs to go. If we want to take back the industry, we're going to have to take back control of our leads. We're going to have to take back control of our data, which the data, let's not even get into that. I don't know that that's even possible at this point. That cat's out of the bag. But certainly we can take back control of our lead gen. And so that's not what we're here to talk about today, but I want you guys to understand that that's what eVocalize does for the real estate industry in a big way. And Matthew, you and I, you don't probably realize this, but we have a lot of friends in common, like Leo Pareja and Rick Haas.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you're probably also dealing with Russ Logan at some point, but
anyway. Yep. And Leo, we worked together with Leo at Remine, and then again at EXP. So yeah, Leo is doing great things for the industry. Really a big fan of my friend Leo, for sure.
Yeah, so funny. I used to coach Leo when he was at Keller Williams. We helped him go from number 600 and something to number 1 in a single year.
Wow,
and then he and
awesome.
I did a ton of REO work together. We traveled for several years together getting REO business, and so it was good times. Anyway, that said, let's get to the topic at hand. The topic at hand is this TCPA stuff. And guys, very few people in the industry really understand this, and really, I think it's more about who they're after that we need to be thinking about. But I want to hear, Matthew, if you could just kind of give us the context. What are we talking about? Why is this important to us? And then I'm gonna drive some more questions for you to kind of go deeper on this.
Awesome, sure thing. So I'll set a little bit of background context, and then we can riff about the practicalities or practical means, what this means to the industry. So just rewinding time a long way, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because again, history can be fun, but it can be boring. So rewinding time back to 1991, this was the first, remember those of us who were, around doing things in 1991, I have the gray hair to prove it. There were landlines, which means a cord attached to your phone in your house. And there started to become a lot of telemarketing spam, if you can imagine it, way back in 1991, with marketers calling house phones and the phones ringing off the hook. And so the government kind of got involved, and there were a series of laws that the TCPA was built on, but they passed for the first time the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which effectively the FCC now governs. But it was the first set of laws to try and govern how folks could reach out to you and control the ring on your home phone. And so this is what the TCPA, when we say TCPA, the roots go back even to a law back into the 20s, but 1991 is really the modern incantation of this. And then this has been adjusted and improved over the years. You might be familiar with the do not call list. If you're not, you need to be. Please be familiar with the do not call list in registry. But this has evolved gradually over time. And now, about two to 3 years ago, the FCC formed a working group because now we all carry this around in our pockets, right? And so, we carry this powerful device around our phone in our pocket all the time. And if anyone living on planet Earth, probably realizes the text spam and the phone spam that you get all day long on your phone. This, of course, impacts the industry because it impacts the pickup rates, the answer rates for your prospective customers. And it became a really big problem, as any kind of consumer, or like I say, human has. And so the FCC formed a working group around this TCPA, and they looked at the problem. And they found that a lot of these calls, and especially the frenzy of calls that some customers got in certain conditions, were caused by what they classify as lead generators or lead aggregators. Now, we already talked about the portals, right? So you mentioned Zillow, lots of other ones in every industry. Like, this is, by the way, the most profitable business model, this marketplace, multi-sided marketplace portal model in the history of the world, because this is how they work, right? They do a bunch of marketing They pay for marketing, just like we're talking about here. They do a bunch of marketing. They get someone to come down to a landing page one or many times, and then they capture their lead information. And then they take that lead information and then they go sell it. And when they first started doing this, a decade ago, more now, I guess, they would sell it to one or two people that were really contextually relevant to the marketing, right? So if it was a mortgage rate website, they would sell to mortgage loan officers the lead. Well, like any savvy business people, they looked at it and they said, well, who else is interested in this mortgage lead? And I'm just picking on one industry. And they started selling it to other people. And so this one lead was like the thing you could sell over and over and over again. Imagine if you could sell the house to every bidder in a hot market at once, right? And so that's what they did. And so they made just immense amounts of money on this selling the leads. And then that fueled their marketing budgets. So then they took a percentage. They took a lot of it as profit, but they took some of this percentage and they plowed it back into their marketing budgets, which went directly into Google and Meta and Facebook and Instagram and a lot of places online where you could generate leads out of, right? And so this is a machine that's been running for years and years. And I tell you that to tell you that is the biggest thing that the FCC is trying to crack down on with the new rules that they're putting in place that go into effect January 27th, is they're trying to, and I'll talk about the specifics or the most important things around this, but that's what they're really trying to crack down on. Is this? It caused this speed to lead, this race condition that happened because this lead was being sold so many times, and you know this from being in the industry. All of a sudden, everyone calls at once, texts at once, and if you're not first, you're probably pissing the customer off, right? And so this is the condition that they're trying to fix with these laws. But man, these laws have far-reaching consequences for every small and local business, including a real estate and mortgage for sure.
Okay, first of all, agree with everything you said. I love the context. I appreciate the background. And the question I think a lot of people are asking right now is, okay, what does this mean? What's going to happen to these lead aggregators? What are they not able to do now? And should we be shorting our Zillow and RDC stocks right now? Should we be going out there and shorting all the Portal stocks, or are they going to find ways to adjust this? And I'll share when at the appropriate time, I'll share how one of our lead sources, Leads Like Candy, some of you know it as ZBuyer, what they've done to adjust and adapt to this. But I mean, no matter how you slice it, Matthew, as I've looked at this, I think you're going to see some decline in profitability for some of these companies that are lead aggregators because they're not going to be able to sell this lead to 100 people anymore.
Yeah. So let's maybe leading into that, Michael, if you'll bear with me, I'll just talk about a couple of the key pieces of the rule because I think it will help people understand the context. Now, these are big, smart businesses and business people. Like Zillow is not going away anytime soon, right? Like but I think when you hear what the main pieces, when your audience hears what the main pieces of this law will do, I think you'll understand like exactly what you've already figured out, which are there are going to be some pretty big changes to these marketplaces and portals from an economic perspective. So let me just lay out two things that are really important new components to this law. The first one is this law now requires one-to-one consent. So what that means is, and I'm going to quote from the actual law, the order technically to the TCPA. Clearly and conspicuously authorizes no more than one identified seller to make telemarketing calls, right? So what this means is that when I talked about the prior world where a portal will go out, do a bunch of marketing, come in, they sometimes have a bunch of people they could sell to on a fine print on a secondary page that no one ever looked at, but they would gather the lead and then they'd figure out what to do with it, right? Now, the FCC has been very specific. They actually they've used an example of a blank checkbox form with the names of the lead buyers that could buy that lead that are blank. And the think about this, like the marketing goes out, consumer comes in, comes to a lead form. Before any data is captured, any lead data is captured by anyone related to this, the consumer has to explicitly check who they want to contact them, right? And those are the only people that can be sold, the only businesses that can be sold the lead. That's what we mean by one-to-one consent. Now, the industry thinks that consumers, we don't know yet totally, right? But the industry thinks 1 to 3 leads, consumers will check, I want 1 to 3. Previously, this has been 8, 10, 12, 15 leads generated from that one contact. So there are a few things we think that will happen with that I can get into, but that's the first main thing here. And then I'll talk about a second when you're ready for me.
All right, before we go into the second one, so first of all, it's one-to-one consent thing. That's exactly what I was going to say is how ZBuyer Leads Like Candy has adapted. They've got that form now that says, select one of these names. They also have a button at the top that says select all. So they can, click the one button that says select all. Interestingly, I was talking with, I think it was Jordan I was talking to the other day down there at Leads Like Candy. And he said that they're getting 93% of the people are selecting the select all button.
Wow. That's good for them. They've done a good job. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm curious to how many choices they have there.
3 that I've seen.
3. Now, 3 makes sense.
I've seen 3.
Yeah. If it's 12, I think that they're less likely to see a select all.
Yeah.
From what we see at the portal level. But 3 is a good number. It sounds like they're doing a pretty good job with, controlling how many choices they have. And
but here's the thing, if they're now choosing, okay, I can select 3, but before that company was able to sell that lead to 12 people, well, where's the money coming from? I mean, they're going to have to get that money somewhere, which tells me lead prices are going up. And by the way, they're also offering now, that particular lead source is now offering exclusive leads. Now, I've never been a fan of exclusive leads because I think people click on multiple websites, and I don't believe that there is such a thing as an exclusive lead.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think we're just better off. We tell our coaching clients that they're better off buying the non-exclusive leads in bulk and just being better on speed to lead and tenacity of follow-up. And if they do that, then they're going to win in the long run. But that being said, I think even the non-exclusive leads are going to get far more expensive. I mean, if you think about it, stands to reason if they can't sell it to 12, now they can only sell it to 3. It stands to reason it's probably going to go up by 4x.
That's right. I think that's one of the things that we talk about that we think will happen. It's already starting to happen. The prices are going up. And so as the leads dry up, right, so there are fewer leads to go around. Now, the positive to that potentially is that the leads are more valuable because there are fewer people reaching out, fewer people competing for that one particular lead source. I think that could be.
I got to jump in on that though, because you saw the call that I did with Ryan yesterday. Yep. Ryan Young from Fellow. Ryan also owns a real estate team, does about 500 transactions a year. And I was having the same conversation with my son, Austin, who's the #1 listing agent in the country right now. And they're both telling me the same thing, that there's really no difference in lead sources. It doesn't matter if it's an exclusive lead, or if it's a quote unquote fast cash conversion cycle lead, or if it's a high intent lead, like a portal lead versus a Facebook lead. Said on balance, the conversion rates are about the same in a 3-year window, in a 36-month window.
Yes, that's the key. So I think, and you talked with Ryan a little bit about this. It's funny. I was nodding along, right? You guys were talking about it, right? You build your database and then you nurture them. And if you think long-term, if you think 6, 12, 18, you said 36 months, 100% agree. A lot of folks don't have the patience for that. And so there's a timeliness component to that. I think that's somewhat in the portal's favor generally because they've nurtured the folks already, right? And so they've gotten them across the line. But I think when I think about the increase in quality, I'm thinking a little bit long-term too. So I think there are going to be fewer leads potentially in the ecosystem if consumers learn that they have more trust in answering the phone, because they're not going to be barraged with 50 people at once and they get 1 or 2 or 3 calls or texts from people that they've selected that they want to contact them. I feel like psychologically, and this is what we talk with a lot of our partners about, psychologically, we feel like over the course of time, we're talking, your time horizon, 12, 24, 36 months, we feel like the psychology will improve and get healthier in the lead ecosystem, right? Because right now, a lot of people, I'm scared to do it. I'm barraged with spam. You submit a lead anywhere, and what is going to happen, right? Like what is going to happen to my phone based on that? And I think as we get more explicit and more direct, we could could actually increase the probability and chances of success there.
Okay, so I'm going to pull the audience here real quick. I want everybody we've got people both on our live webinar. We've also got people on Facebook Live. Those of you that are watching right now, I'd love for you to type into the chat. Do you think that the lead quality will improve, stay the same, or decline as a direct result of this? I'm curious, what do you see happening over the next 12, 24, 36 months? So just type in improve, stay the same, decline. All right, Matthew, I want to keep going because I want to make sure you get to that second point. So tell us about the second point.
Okay, so we talked about one-to-one, and there are a few other things that are a little more minor, I would say, in this. And please talk with your attorneys. I'm not your attorney for anyone listening. Neither is Michael, to cover him too.
Thank you.
So please talk to your attorney about this. It's a really important thing. Lots of lawsuits. Like this thing is going to be, there are a lot of estimates that in 2024, there are about $1 billion already in lawsuits, settlements, and fines. And a lot of them were in the real estate space. So this thing is going to be potentially bigger than anything else we've seen. Even the buyer lawsuits, any of this stuff, we think TCPA is going to be larger than all of that stuff. So
really, you think it's going to be larger than the Sitzer lawsuit?
Yeah, we do.
Really?
Yeah. And I've talked with and I do a bunch of the webinars. I don't know if you've seen any of them with the TCPA world folks, with Troutman Amin, and they're in a lot of the meetings with the legislative group working on these in the working group. And Eric Troutman, the managing director over there, said to me he thinks it's going to be the biggest lawsuit puzzle that they've ever seen, and that they have attorneys waiting to call for January 27th, just lined up to just fire lawsuits up and down the chain.
How ironic is that? Hey, we've got attorneys lined up to make calls to go after people making calls. Are you freaking kidding me?
I know. They better make human calls and not use any technology in the cycle. Otherwise they're going to get sued themselves.
Dude, it makes you wish your dad was president so he could pardon you, right?
I know. Yeah, I know.
Geez, dude, sorry.
I know.
I couldn't resist.
No, I'm with you. So let's get to the second piece, and we can talk about a lot of the ramifications, because there are ramifications for your existing CRM database too that are not insignificant.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the second piece, we talked about one-to-one consent. Mm-hmm. The second, and that applies to you too. If you're an agent, by the way, that consent has to include the service provider themselves in the disclosure. Mm-hmm. So when you have a lead disclosure, you need to include your representative broker name in the lead consent.
Okay, I got to stop you right there. This is a big deal, and I want to go deeper on this. So does that mean if I own a real estate brokerage, and I'm buying the lead as the broker, my agent in the brokerage has to be named? And let's take it another step further. What about a team? So I own a team. Does each individual team member need to be named? This is a big deal.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Unfortunately, this is going to be legislated out, I think, in talking with Eric and the Troutman Amin folks. But I'll just talk about a couple of the things, and then we'll get to the second one. We haven't even gotten to that yet, but talk about a couple of things related to this. So
hold on. Sorry. So back up though. Are you thinking that we're going to, if I own a team or brokerage, that the individual agent in that team or brokerage has to be named in the disclosure?
No, it's more important for you, the representative brokerage, to be named in their marketing, right? So it's really that the way the TCPA reads this, or this new rule interprets this, is there's a service provider that's providing the service, mm-hmm. and then there's a salesperson, effectively. And if you think about the real estate industry, the broker is providing the product, the service. They're on the hook generally, legally, right? So they're providing the service. And then the real estate agent or team, whoever is bundled under that brokerage, is technically the salesperson. So they're effectively making calls on behalf of the brokerage. And so the brokerage needs to be named. Whoever is responsible needs to be named in the lead form disclosure itself in order to cover the entire chain. Now, I advise that we generally put the brokerage and the agent name in disclosures when the agent is running marketing, just to have a double coverage there. But it's effectively the brokerage, the service. TCPA calls it service provider, has to be identified in that. And it's for these industries, mortgage, real estate is very complicated because these are very complicated contractor. You just mentioned it, very complex relationships.
Well, and I think that the answer then also somewhat lies in we don't really know yet. I mean, let's take, for example, the real estate team. I mean, generally speaking, the real estate teams are buying more of these leads than the brokerages are. Yeah. And so if a real estate team is buying leads, they still have a broker, but they're not naming the broker on that. They're naming the team or, the team lead and or the team name. And so that I think you're right about that. I think that one only gets settled in court.
Yeah, I agree. And there have already been lawsuits, by the way, on this kind of up and down the chain in multiple industries. Like Allstate, for instance, in March 2024, even before this new rule is technically in effect, lost a summary judgment and were found to have violated TCPA through the acts of their independent agents. So Allstate, the service provider, was sued because their independent agents did something. And the reverse has also been true. Personally sued real estate agents. The requests to dismiss their cases have been denied, and they've been held liable for their actions top to bottom. So the entire chain, and even marketing service providers in the middle, have been held responsible for these things. So the entire chain that your leads come from needs to be known, and they all have potential liability up and down the hook.
Okay, now I got to ask another one. What about the technology service providers?
Could be. We're nervous about it. We're enforcing required disclosures for every one of our partners and all of their lead generation. They have to do it. Otherwise, we won't service them. So it's, I mean, it's a really,
you know, Howard over at Wailopo, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think that's why Howard made the decision to go where Wailopo, they've got great AI for their lead follow-up. But at the end of the day, they'll only use their AI on leads generated through Wailopo. And I think that's why. Yes. I think the reason they're doing that is because of TCPA. I haven't had this conversation with Howard. I need to get him on and we'll talk with him about it sometime. But I would venture to guess that had a lot to do with that decision.
Well, I think it's everything, because the other thing is in the lead form disclosure, in order to use AI, pre-recorded voice, or any AI technology, you have to specifically in the lead form disclosure mention AI. That was an add-on to this ruling that happened. It's one of the smaller things that I talked about earlier, because there are really two big chunky things and then a bunch of little smaller things related to this that you may want to make sure your lead disclosures are right. Here. So AI, if you want to use any AI on any leads that you capture going forward, you have to, and there's some impacts to your past leads that we'll talk about in a minute too, but you have to have that AI mentioned in the lead form disclosure.
That's a big deal. Awesome. Good stuff. Okay. Keep going. I love
Okay. Let's go number two. I love this. We're like getting into it, right? Yeah. Okay. Number two. So we talked about one-on-one consent. Now the second one is that the lead that's generated has to be contextually relevant to the marketing that was done to generate the lead. So that means that if I remember, we talked about in the past, these lead aggregators, according to the FCC, would do a bunch of marketing on kind of broad topics and then sell to folks, not just in one industry, not just for one topic, but on a lot of different topics. The FCC is saying, no. You need to, whatever your marketing is doing, like if we market mortgage rates, the leads need to be sold to folks that are contextually going to call with services that are contextually relevant to the marketing itself.
So in other words, I can't have a real estate agent lead form and sell that lead to a wedding planner.
No, that is exactly in the spirit of what the TCPA amendment and order is trying to correct. Now, the things that are closely aligned will need to be legislated out. Like if you market for mortgage rates and you sell to a mortgage company that offers a HELOC or has some kind of other service, does that count or not? We're not.
Or what about a real estate agent that wants to work with buyers?
Or a real estate agent that wants to work with buyers, right? And so I think those are less likely. This is my own personal opinion. I think the government is going to go after, they're not trying to go after folks who are trying to do it right. They're trying to go after folks who are doing it wrong kind of intentionally to make a lot of money, right?
Well, go ahead.
The attorneys don't care.
Well, okay. First of all, yes, I agree with you. The attorneys don't care. It's interesting because in the Sitzer case, we saw a lot of attorneys. We saw teams being named, team leaders being named. I mean, it's crazy, and we're not even done with that one. That's just getting started. So that being said, what that leads me to question is, all right, I'm a real estate agent. and I'm buying leads from different lead providers. Do I need to be worried? Do I need to be concerned about who I'm buying from, how they're opting these people in, and whether my lead source is providing me contextually relevant leads?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
because I have just as much liability as they do, whether I realize
you have to get proof from anyone you buy a lead from. If you don't generate it yourself and you don't know the entire funnel, you don't know the flow where it came from, you have to get proof all the way up. You have to have proof that it was the consent form. You have to have proof of the marketing topic and the marketing that went. You have to have proof for the lead form and that it was an opt-in checkbox. Like, you have to have proof of that entire flow, because otherwise you have individual liability for that lead.
Okay, so this is where it gets cray. So I've always told people, they say, real estate attorneys, for example, or any attorney. Attorneys are great on the law, but they generally give bad business advice, has been my experience. Take my word for it. I had one cost me $100 million once. That's a whole other story. That being said, as I think about that, I think, okay, is it really practical? Is it really realistic that a real estate agent who's buying leads from these lead providers is going to get them to send evidence that they're following this properly? And I think the answer's got to be no.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying I don't think it's practical.
Yeah, I mean, practical or not, there are going to be a lot of people get sued related to it. So, I mean, I think the reality is that the providers of leads are going to be forced to have documented proof that they provide along with the lead itself. Like, it's just, it's going to, like, there are a lot of folks, a number of the big insurance companies now have created lists of authorized lead providers that they've verified that, in technology solutions that they've verified comply, and they've gone and vetted the entire flow. And I actually think that's what's going to happen more with these industries, is that there's going, in Troutman and Mean, I think they've been, again, I mentioned them earlier. Check out tcpaworld.com if you get a chance. We're not affiliated with it, but they're just a good source of intel here. But they've set up a new standards body called Reach, and it's all about how the right way to gather leads that are compliant. And there are companies, technology providers, and others that are becoming members of this group and certifying they're going to comply. And part of that is providing verified proof of the lead. So I just personally think the value of leads that come with proof is going to go way up. Probably the leads that don't have proof won't disappear, but they're going to go down because there's risk or liability associated with them. It's not going to happen until people see their friends get sued, right?
And that's the thing. I think you're right, but I don't think that it happens until there's enough lawsuits to get people's attention. And again, I keep coming back to practicality, right? I mean, I think, okay, you've got, almost 2 million real estate agents out there that are making these freaking, okay, 2 million of them aren't making phone calls. Let's say, 45 agents are actually making phone calls. I'm just joking. But the reality is that I don't think most of them are going to ask for that. They're not going to know to ask for it. I think most of them are kind of thinking this is not a big deal. They're so focused on the commission case that, the antitrust cases that they are not. This isn't even on the radar for most of them. And by the way,
this is why the attorneys are lining up, Michael. Like,
I think you're right, because that's another way to blindside the industry. I go, where's the class action lawsuit? Who's going to be the first one to file a tort claim? I mean, it's coming, right? By the way, we got a lot of people watching right now, and I want to make sure that you guys understand. Like, Gary just posted something. I'm going to ask his question in just a second, but I want you guys to type your question, whether you're on the webinar with me or whether you're on Facebook Live. Type your questions in to the comments, and I will do the very best I can to convey those to Matthew as we go along. But Gary's question relates to the next step, which is, does this impact people that are calling FSBOs expireds or geofarming an area? And if so, how? Yeah.
So I'm going to answer that at a slightly abstracted level, right? So, but it will apply. These rules apply. Now, do not call list applies to everything, right? So like, do not call list has been there for a while. You got to always look at that. So I was like, that's my little disclaimer. Don't forget about that in this stuff, right? So do not call list. These apply to using any regulated technology to contact via SMS or phone. It doesn't regulate email. right? So email is kind of outside of this. It has its own kind of things, but it's outside of this particular thing that we're talking about. These lead generator loophole closure rules. And so I would say it really depends. And regulated technology are things like IVRs, auto dialers, any auto texters, anything that's helping you make calls, any technology that helps it make it faster or easier to make calls. And so,
and or access someone's phone via SMS.
Right. Even voicemail, automated voicemails, all that stuff.
So direct ringless voicemail drops would be impacted.
They are impacted. Yes. So anything related to anything that's unrelated to a human representing the service provider calling on the phone or texting manually is considered generally regulated technology according to this rule. So and that's the main problem they're trying to solve, because if it's just humans calling, it gets expensive, right? To make the one-to-one calls. And so it's the FCC, at least in some of their commentary, has talked about like, okay, that's not as the big problem we're trying to solve. We're really trying to solve the use of all this technology in the process. So I want to make sure that's clarified first. That applies to every contact you make. It doesn't matter whether it's expired lead, doesn't matter what it is that you do. It's that exact same mechanism. It's that exact same construct. So you can apply it to any tactic, any technique you use in the industry. That is the rubric. Are we using automated technology? Do we have opt-in consent? Now, the law is still a little loose. I think they're going to adjust it as they go. But you really, in order to call anyone using regulated technology or text anyone using regulated technology, even if it comes from like your loan officer you're working with and it's handed across the table to you, in order to do it technically, according to this law, you have to have the written consent. You have to have express written consent that's documented according to everything we've talked about today. Now, you can pick up the phone and call them, like I mentioned earlier, but you cannot use technology to do it.
Okay, that's okay. I'm glad you said that, because I was about to freak out there. So essentially what you're saying is, all right, loan officer sends me a referral, which by the way, never happens. But it's the other way.
It's the other way only, huh?
Right? Yeah. Don't get me started. But okay, let's use a more realistic scenario. We refer someone to a loan officer. So my son is a real estate agent. My daughter's a loan officer. So Austin refers Madison a lead. She does not have to have express written consent to call that lead, but she would have to have express written consent to text that lead with auto text, but not manual text. She can manual text, she can manual call, but she cannot auto text, auto direct to voicemail, or anything like that.
That is what all the legal scholars believe is the case. Yes. Okay. All the legal scholars that I've spoken with and that we've read opinion pieces from. Yes.
Okay, so this is helpful. I feel like this is really getting us somewhere. So now let's take this a step further. So now I'm using a service like the RedX, Prospect Boss, Espresso Agent. I'm using a service like that to find my expired listings for sale by owners, cross-reference across the do not call list. So I know I'm safe there. I'm not calling anybody on the DNC. But am I allowed to make those calls as a real estate agent? A, by dialing one at a time, B, by using dialer software that allows me to call more than one at a time.
Dialer software, I think, is a problem for you. One-to-one at a time by typing in the number is going to be defensible according to the law. So, and the same thing is related to the text. If you type in the text, but if you use any kind of complete, AI to complete your text, any technology to write the text, anything to scale the text, then you're at risk.
So hold on. So does that mean I can't copy and paste the text? Can I use copy and paste?
This is where this thing goes way down the rabbit hole, Michael. Right? I mean, those are things that have not been. Look again.
That's a legit question. I mean, that's a big deal.
I was asked the question on a webinar with our partner Side, and someone said, "What if I use my iPhone?" Right? And I said, technically, it's not been used as an example of regulated technology. However, that's going to be legislated out. I would put my weight, in my opinion, just to be clear, it's an opinion, on the side of those things I think are going to be fine. but things like I think people are particularly sensitive to AI, autocomplete, some of that stuff. So I think you do have to be careful about using any kind of, if you were to go into GPT and have Chat GPT write your texts, use that in. I think those are areas to be careful.
Very interesting. Okay, and so this is okay. We're going to keep going down this rabbit hole and things that you can and cannot do. I want to dive deeper into that because let's be real here. These are real questions that impact everybody listening to this call right now. It is so important. And so that being said, I think we've also got to come back to the practicality side. And I think we got to ask ourselves, who are they really after? What's really likely to happen? Again, can't stop the one-off attorneys from suing somebody. We found that out again with the antitrust lawsuits where teams were gone after. But really, in reality, who are they after here? Are they really after the lead aggregators? Are they after the people that are using AI technology? Are they after the little agent or the little insurance agent? I swear I heard you say somewhere that, look, they recognize that they don't want to decimate entire industries like insurance and real estate, knowing what a burden this is going to be potentially if it's misconstrued, or it could become a major burden for both of those industries. Where does this go?
Yeah, well, I did say that. You heard me right. Thank you. The one dissenter on this order that was actually ratified last December, right? So it's been like coming for a long time. But the one dissenter, and I think it was a 4-1 vote. I always screwed up if it was 3-1 or 4-1, but I think it was a 4-1 vote. And the one dissenter didn't want more spam, right? What they were worried about was the impact on small and local businesses, because they recognized, and I think the council generally recognized, that we, the industry, depend on leads. And this is a lot for us to have to deal with, right? Like, we're not all attorneys, right? We're not all. So you talk about the practicality. The one dissenter on this rule was specifically focused on that aspect, the fact, and I think they even mentioned, if I'm remembering correctly from a year ago, they even mentioned the real estate industry in this dissent. So yes, I think that's they're not, the law is not geared to go after the little guys. They're really trying to rein in the big guys. And in fact, I would argue it's probably not even targeted to the named big names that you see in the primo names like a Zillow, et cetera. I would argue it's not even really aimed at that. It's aimed at these kind of aggregators that take all of these websites that are random name, leads.com, and they're pooling it all together, and they have a machine, and so we think that's where it was. Well, we know from some of their commentary that's where they were originally targeting. But the problem is, it's not just them that are the problem. Once this goes into effect January 27th, the attorneys, the class action, the lawsuits are the real big problem here. And I know agents personally that are very close to me that have already, and maybe we have some folks listening or will listen to this podcast, that have already been kind of blackmailed by folks that they've called for leads to say, give me $3,000 or I'm going to file this lawsuit related to your calling because I was, I'm in this protected environment. And so, and I didn't give you consent to call. Right. And so that is the big fear, I think, for the little guy, the mid-sized guy, is really less the regulatory industries and more the class action attorneys and the plaintiffs' attorneys out there.
Well, and to your point, I don't even know if it's those guys that as a little guy, that I'd be really concerned about. I'm more concerned about the blackmailers. And, we see this online, with people hacking people's websites and taking control of their websites and trying, selling them back to them, that sort of thing. We've seen that happen with with clients. I've had somebody do exactly what you just described. It was actually a real estate agent said that I wasn't allowed to call them. Now that's business to business, different set of rules.
Yes, different set of rules. Yep.
And so I just told them to pound sand, and that was the end of it. And had they taken me to task and sued me over it, great, I'll go to bat with that. But the typical real estate agent out there doesn't have the bandwidth to do that, and it's B2C, it's business to consumer, not B2B, and so this does apply to them. And so. Go ahead.
You're 100% right. No, I'm just nodding along because they don't have the bandwidth to deal with it, and it's scary, frankly.
That's right. No, it is. But here's the thing, as we say this, and I'm going to get Gary Owens got another question. Gary, and I love these questions. I would encourage all of you to ask questions. These are great questions I'm getting. But before I get to Gary's question, I think for me, I would encourage agents to not be too afraid of this because, and here's the reason why I say this. You can live in fear and you can be paralyzed by this and it can stop you from doing all lead generation efforts. And if that happens, you're out of business anyway. So now what are you going to do, right? Like go work for McDonald's. Oh, can't do that. They've got kiosks now, right? So what am I going to do next, right? I mean, so at the end of the day, I think real estate agents have to understand that, look, you're going to have to do the best you can to operate within the guidelines, but there's always going to be some level of risk. There's not going to be a situation or a reality in which you don't have some sort of risk, some sort of potential liability. Again, somebody could go through the drive-through McDonald's, spill coffee on themselves and sue McDonald's. I mean, come on, it's stupid. Now, do I think with the new political environment, do I think some of that may change? Maybe, but it takes a long time for that to happen. And so I think in the meantime, what we have to do is we just have to say, look, I've got to be in business. I've got to do things that generate business. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Matthew, and then I'm going to go to Gary's question.
Sounds good. Yeah, I would generally agree with you. The only thing that I would caveat that with is awareness is really important here because you can't let it paralyze you because you have to do business, right? And so Totally 100% agree with you. But if you're doing your own marketing, if you're buying leads, know where they come from. You can demand that of your marketing team. Again, we demand that of all of the folks we partner with. We put in lead consent for you to build these one-to-one lead generation, engines for the industry, right? Because you can do what a portal does yourself, right? You can spend media, go out to fish where they fish on Google and Meta and all these places and build a one-to-one lead generation engine. If you do that, make sure you're putting the disclosures in place so that, it's not that hard to do. And GPT can help you write that if you wanted to, right? Talk to your attorney, but that whole pipeline, be aware. And if you're buying leads, be aware and ask the question, what proof do I have of this lead? Those are things to me that I think are reasonable asks versus getting paralyzed and not wanting to do anything related to it.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think a year from now, I think they're all going to provide it. I just don't think they're going to do it now. I think some will. The smart ones will. I think you're going to see it from Zillow, Realtor.com. All the portals will start to provide that. You're going to see it from leadsLikeCandy.com. The bigger providers will be providing that data. The screenshots of, hey, here's what we have in our funnel. Here's how it works. We're compliant. Here's our evidence of that. But I think it's going to take some of the smaller guys a while to catch up to that. Now, by the way, real quick side note, I just want to check with you. With eVocalize, you guys work with individual agents also. So if they wanted to build their own, landing page funnel, and they wanted to drive traffic to it, is that something you guys do?
Not yet. So we're sneak peek. We're again bundled under the brokerage technology or the CRM technology for many of the largest players out there today because we believe an integrated approach is really the right one. You don't want to use 14 tools. It's a pain in the ass, frankly. And it just takes away from the benefit of setting up an automated, AI agent that can do it for you. If you have to then go take it, put it into your CRM, put it into a nurturing thing. And so, but just sneak peek. And we haven't announced this yet, but we're releasing an integrated direct to loan officer solution in the mortgage space with the leading CRM there. On Monday, that will be announced. And then that's total expert in the loan officer space. And then we're looking at a couple of the leading, some ways to do this direct to agent and team in Q1. So it's coming, but we don't do it quite yet. But we want to make sure we integrate the whole thing smoothly top to bottom because we don't want people to have to use 14 tools and log. It just defeats the purpose.
All right. So on that note, though, I'm going to be reaching out to you afterwards. Let's you and I talk. Obviously, my daughter's in the mortgage industry and would love to be on the forefront of that. So,
awesome. Love to.
All right, let's ask Gary's question real quick here. This is a good one. So if you're using a dialer software like the RedX, Mojo, Prospect Boss, any of those companies, Espresso Agent, but you're only using the one-line dialer instead of the multi-line dialer, is that defensible or would you be more likely to be considered to be in compliance? Or do you actually have to physically use your cell phone and dial from your cell phone.
I think the spirit of the law is you physically have to type the numbers in and dial the number. But again, to your point, Michael, like the levels of risk increase the more you deviate from that. In my experience, being a business person around that, like, look, I'm a CEO of a tech company, right? So I think like you about the law. We spend a lot of time thinking about this and talking about this law. But there are practical realities around it. I'll repeat, talk to your attorney. Michael's not your attorney. But we're trying to educate you around this. So I think, yes, the spirit of the law is one or multi, doesn't matter. It's still using regulated technology to make the call. But the reality is how discoverable, defensible, like the further you get away from typing, the more at risk you are. And I'm not sure that I would be worried personally if I were doing this myself about using a one-line dialer on that. But that's my tolerance for risk. To Michael's point earlier, everyone has a different tolerance for risk around this.
Yeah, I'm with you though. I think I've got a pretty high tolerance for risk for some of that kind of stuff, and honestly, I really feel like the agents that are willing to take on a little bit more risk with that are more likely to have more success, because others are going to crawl into a hole and be worried about, oh my gosh, COVID hit, I can't do business anymore, right? No, like you can still use Zoom. You can still, you got to find ways to be productive and succeed in this business. So
yeah, and just be smart about, like, understand the risk that you're taking. Like it doesn't have to stop you. Just use it as part of the calculation in your mind of like, what risk am I taking here? If I use a one-line dialer and someone figures out that I used a one-line dialer, or I have to, reveal that in court, maybe if you have to reveal it in court and you go to court, then there's some risk there that technically that is part of the law. But again, there's a lot between you using a one-line dialer and going into court and having to defend on all that stuff. So they're all just risk reward trade-offs that I think you need to think about and make in the industry. But a lot of that stuff will be legislated out too, Michael. Like there are so many nuances to this law. It's impossible. Like the working group has not explored all of them, and they've certainly not been explicit about all of them. So a lot of the things that we talk about, that the attorneys talk about, that go on and talk, TCPA World talks about, are nuanced cases, in gray area that will be figured out by the courts.
Well, and I think Jeff Wheatley makes a good example, for those that are a little bit concerned about that. I'm on a Facebook feed here. He says, good business decisions might be to click to call more defensible than even a one-line dialer. I mean, again, it's click to call, right? So it's, again, to Matthew's point, getting you closer to the actual physically dialing the phone with yourself. Okay, so this is all awesome information. So let's back up. What are we missing from a legal standpoint, and what are we missing in this contextually?
So one thing that we haven't touched on, I want people to understand, again, with all the context that we've tried to provide, and Michael's, obviously, as he always does, provided some awesome business context to this, trying to get you educated. There's one piece of education that you need to know that we haven't talked about yet. We've talked about new leads. We've not talked about your existing database. Okay. Yep. There are already some rules related to consent that are out there, right? For using technology to contact your CRM database. These are getting more stringent, as we've talked about today, starting January 27th. Mm-hmm.
But now, hold on, back up really quick, because we had heard a December 15th date. What I'm hearing you say is December 15th is no longer a factor. It's January 27th.
They changed it a little bit along the way over the course of the last year. So now it's January 27th. Let me check my notes. Yes, January 27th, to make sure I'm not misleading people. January 27th. And that
date requires what?
That date is when this new order goes into place that requires one-to-one consent, requires proving contextuality of marketing, and a few other things, as you've talked about AI in the disclosure language. So, but keep in mind that the wording in this is a little bit complex. And again, I'm going to give more props to the Troutman Amin group, who've done a lot of detailed analysis here. And I talked with them recently about this. This law applies not just to leads that you generate going forward. It also applies to how you contact your entire contact database that you already have. So it doesn't mean
including your sphere of influence. This is everybody.
Everything. So it doesn't mean that your CRM contacts are valueless.
That's right.
that are in your database. However, there are things that you can't do in the spirit of this law on come January 27th that you could do today. If you had disclosures that were valid up until now, you cannot use automated technology, including automated SMS, text, automated dialers, any of that to your existing contact database come January 27th, unless you recapture disclosure and consent from those customers. Now, we're in a little bit of a time window here where you could reach out to them and gather new consent via automated technology. But once you get to January 27th, you cannot even use regulated automated technology to reach out to gather new consent because it's cart before horse, right? So, and that's been addressed very explicitly. Come January 27th, your existing contact database is treated just like any new lead that you gather. So again, doesn't impact if you human pick up the phone, type in a text, but it does impact the use of any of this technology for your existing customer database. So you need to.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So you need to just be diligent about, again, being informed. I had an accounting professor in B school that said being forewarned is forearmed. And that always stuck with me, right? And it's like, okay, you don't have to do all this, but realize you're taking a risk if you don't.
I 100% agree. And so, guys, I think this is one of the reasons why you will see a resurgence. And I don't know that it's going to be massive, but I think that you may see more Filipino ISAs involved in people's businesses because, again, we're getting to one-to-one calls. And as an agent and when I say agent, I don't mean real estate agent. I mean as an employee or an agent, if you will, of the real
salesperson, according to the TCPA. Yeah.
Correct. They would be legally allowed to make that phone call. And so I think that's a place where we could see an uptick. I think we could see an uptick in not just the real estate industry. And I think this is important. I'm saying this because I think as a result of this, it could get more difficult and maybe even more expensive to hire VAs from maybe the Philippines, India, Central and South America, whatever. I think you could see a lot more demand in the U.S. for those services. And even if it goes up 10%, that's a lot of demand that could impact your ability to get the best for the right price. And so
I think that's right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think there are a couple other things that we won't have time to get to today, it looks like, but that you should just be thinking about. So I talked about naming the service provider in the lead disclosure. There are some thoughts that maybe if you're an agent and you don't want to put the brokerage service provider in the lead disclosure form, because then it's not portable, right? Then the lead disclosure is locked to the brokerage that you're at now, and you can't take that and use it with regulated technology to another brokerage, right? You're generating leads or buying leads that are locked to that particular service provider, which is a thing I think most people haven't thought about. There are some angles here that they're talking about. Maybe the service is not the buy seller of the house; it's the search for the house or the assistance selling the house. And this is like way out on the edge of like what people are thinking. But there's some thought that if you can define the service as not the buy or sell of the house, then you might be able to put your name in the lead disclosure and not the broker's name. But again, this is like frontier stuff, so be careful with it. I'm not telling you can do that today. I'm just saying that that's some of the legal thinking that from some of the attorneys on the like frontier of this law.
Okay, so then let me ask you this: what is the penalty? So again, we've discussed, for the most part, for most of you guys, this shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be, this isn't going to be a game, like a game-ending thing for you guys. You should still be able to make your calls, do your thing. But that said, Matthew, if someone gets hit with a penalty on this, what is the penalty?
Yeah. So again, just to reiterate, I think the main risk for the practitioners are the lawsuits, related to the attorneys. And so, right. but technically the penalty is between $500 and $2,000. There's some nuance to which one it is, but between $500 and $2,000 per incident. So that means per person that per individual that you've dialed using regulated technology, et cetera. So if you do that math, it gets to be a pretty big number pretty fast, right? So that's a little bit of the worry. around that. But again, as a practitioner, I'm not as worried as an agent about the government coming down and penalizing me. I'm more worried about the attorneys, blackmail and or the attorneys coming at me from a side.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. Okay, so, and by the way, side note, I know we're running out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. But anecdotally, are you a country music fan?
Yeah, I'm more Texas country music than Nashville country music, having grown up in and around Austin. But
the reason I bring that up is you probably know Tracy Lawrence.
Yes.
So I'm gonna bend your ear and I'm gonna twist your arm and I'm gonna find a way to get you to come out to our listing agent boot camp in April. And I'm gonna, while we're there, it's in Nashville. And while we're there, I'm going to invite you to a private concert. There'll be about 300 of our agents that will get to join us at a private concert with Tracy Lawrence.
Heck yeah.
And so I would love to have you come out because, and the ask that I'm going to have is I want to get you to teach a class at our listing agent boot camp on all of this for people that want to go deeper on it. And I think especially then we'll have more information because now we would have, a couple of months of, okay, what's happened with this? What lawsuits have come out? All that. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes forward. I want to make sure that you get a chance to wrap this up with anything else you feel we need to know about this right now. And by the way, for those of you that are interested in joining us at Listing Agent Bootcamp, make sure you guys go to clubwealth.com/LABC, clubwealth.com/LABC to learn more about that event. And if all you guys just want to do a strategy session with one of our coaches, maybe you just want to just learn a little bit more about this. Maybe you just want to find out a little bit more about Club Wealth, go to clubwealth.com/strategy session. And one time per year, you get a free coaching call, whether you're a client or not. We're happy to help you with that. So Matthew, take us out with your final thoughts on this. Anything else that we missed that you want to make sure we don't forget?
I think the main note that I'll take you out on, by the way, thanks for the offer. It sounds amazing. Would love to, it's very generous. Would love to have the opportunity to engage with y'all. The thing that I'll say is, look, I'm going to double down on what Ryan Young said in your prior session, which is your database is the most important thing you have. You can build a one-to-one compliant lead generation pipeline that feeds both through a lot of the techniques that Ryan talked about and some of the techniques that we talk about to build your own database. That is your currency. That will be the long-standing nature. We have a bunch of data on our technology that once you get to 202 qualified contacts that aren't just friends and family, but are contacts in the real estate space in your database, you now can make more than $100,000 a year in the business, right? So bunch of data that we look at in the industry that tells us that, right? And so the more contacts that you put into that database, the more this becomes an engine, and you have to start before you're ready for them, right? So you need to give them 3, 6, 9, 12 months and more to matriculate. Don't be scared when they don't come through after month 2 or month 3. Keep doing it. It's the pattern and pattern and pattern. So all of these laws, y'all, they can be scary. And I know the Sitzer lawsuits, everything's a lot going on in the industry. So we want you to be aware. Thank you, Michael, for giving us the opportunity to just come make people aware that this is happening. I think this is pushing everyone toward generally what they should be doing anyway, which is above the board marketing, one-to-one, educate the market, be your local expert, and be online and build your own database. And so I think this in long term, personally, I think this is going to be a good thing for the industry. It's just going to have some waves before we get there. And we don't want anyone listening to be caught up in that wave. So thank you for having me. Super appreciate it. And just really, really excited about where the future brings us and adapting to some of these changes.
Seriously, man, I appreciate you being on. And yeah, you're going to be hearing from my team on Listening Into Bootcamp, get you to come out there and speak at that event. But that being said, I don't want you to get bombarded, but at the same time, if you want to share your contact information, I'd love to have you do that. If you'd rather just have them go through us, then I'm okay with that too. It's up to you.
No, happy to. Email me. I'm just Matt, MATT @evocalize.com. Email. And so just reach out to me personally. That's my own address. And then LinkedIn, Google me, reach out to however Matthew Marx Evocalize, and reach out to me on LinkedIn is the platform I'm most active on, but we're company wide active on all of them. So love to hear from you. Love to connect with you. Just love being a part of this awesome industry that I feel like makes a big difference in, the housing market and makes a big difference in people's lives. So Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for that. And guys, those of you that feel like you got value on this call, would you do me a favor? Could you hit the share button, hit the like button on the Facebook post or wherever you happen to see this, share it, tag your friends in it, tag your broker in it, tag your attorney in it, whatever. Like seriously, like get everybody around you understanding this information. The more we understand, the more we share this, the better it is for all of us as an industry. And it would really mean a lot to me if you guys would share that. We'd super appreciate it. Like it, love it, share it, do all that. So that said, have an awesome day, everybody. Thank you, Matthew, so much for doing this. It is honestly, it's an honor. I said the first couple of webinars I saw you do, I'm like, I have to get him on Global TV. We have to share this. And so we'll be slicing and dicing this and putting it out there in lots of different ways. And it'll be part of our podcast, of course. And we'll hopefully see you at Listening Agent Bootcamp. So take care.
Looking forward to it, Michael. Thank you very much.
Club Wealth is the only coaching company on the planet that will literally guarantee that you will double your income or make at least an extra $100,000 your first year coaching with us, or we will give you 100% of your investment back. Click the link below, sign up for the appropriate tier level, and let's get you a strategy session today. And I promise you, I 100% guarantee you, promise you that you will walk away with a heart full of gratitude for the time that we took for you because you got so much value out of that call. Schedule your strategy session today. I promise you'll be glad you did.